Page 32, the Bridge of Avignon. Actually, this is page 32 and 33. It's the same piece in two different key signatures. They're talking about, on page 32, common time. Common time is that C you see at the beginning of each staff. It stands for 4/4 because 4/4 is the most common time signature used. So sometimes, instead of 4/4, they put the C there. I use them interchangeably. I'm liable to say either one. On page 33, they talk about transposing. What they've done on page 33 is they've taken the piece on page 32, which is in F major, it's got one flat, and they've transposed that piece to the key of G major, it's one sharp. But you can see the difference between an F and a G is a whole step. So they have in effect transposed the piece up one whole step. So in this video I'm actually covering both pages, 32 and 33. We're going to do both because we're playing the same song just in two different keys. Now you'll see on these pages they have what they call melody patterns. You'll notice this in music all the time. There's certain patterns that repeat over and over. I don't really have a lot to say about them. You can read about them up at the top of page 32. They don't affect how you play it, usually. You just keep playing it. It's just a little bit about musical form and music theory and all that junk. If you're interested in that sort of thing, knock yourself out. Just go for it. There's a few little things in the right hand I'd like to talk about. Okay, because the left hand, all you're doing is chords. Basically, a few simple half notes hopefully won't cause you a problem. But the right hand I'd like to talk about. Starting out right at the beginning, you have thumb on the F's, index fingers on the G's. I would suggest that you not use the same finger for repeated notes if you can help it. Sometimes you can't help it. It's just easier to go ahead and use the same finger. But in most cases it's better to use different fingers. So I would suggest on the first measure, rather than using thumb on all three F's, that you do a 1, 2, 1. So you alternate the first two fingers. Okay? Then in the next measure it's 2, 1, 2. That way we're not using the same finger every time. So it's okay. Now when you get over to the third measure, you have the A, B flat, and C, and you can put your thumb on the F and then cross over to the third finger to get the E. Okay, so if you can do the scales, this crossover thing is a piece of cake. If you can't do the scales, then please go do the scales. In the second line, on the first measure, you're ending up in this position. If you just played the C right before it in the thumb, I would recommend for those F's, the first one use third finger, next one use second finger, and then the thumb. That gets you in the position so you don't have to go from here to here. That's a little awkward. So you're here, and then in the second measure, the second line, it's 2, 1, 2 again. And then you follow the fingering they've got is fine. Now in the third line, you have the A's, third finger. I would recommend a 3, 1, 3, 1. And for the third measure, the F's, I would do a 1, 2, 1, 2. It's fine. And then the last line is like the first line, is what I suggest. You can use your fingering if you want, but I'm just trying to encourage you to break out of that a little bit and start thinking of other fingering styles, because the music's going to get a little more difficult and these other styles will help you out. So with that, let's try this piece on page 32 together. It's in common time or 4/4 time, so I'll give us 4 counts and we'll start together. So your hands go wherever, here and here. here we go. 1, 2, ready, go. 4, 3, 4. Now the piece on 33 is exactly the same. The fingering for the piece on page 33 is a little different than page 32 because of the black notes. And page 32 we had the B flat to deal with. Now we have a G sharp to deal with, so that changes things slightly. For instance, I'm talking right hand here. The left hand can just play its chords. It's doing fine, it does its thing, that's okay. It's the right hand that's got to deal with it. So again, in the first measure, I recommend a 1-2-1 like we did before. Next measure, a 2-1-2. That's the same, okay? Third measure, now you cross over just like you did before, except now it's an F sharp. First measure of the second line is a 3-2-1 again. 2-1-2. The last measure of the second line is different. You have a 3. Now you could put the thumb on the F sharp. It's just awkward to do it. And I personally, in the fingering that I use, I won't use a thumb on a black note because it's a short finger. Where am I here? It can get awkward. You can't help it sometimes, you have to, but in this case you don't have to, and they're showing the fingering that I would use anyway. So in that last measure of the second line, it's a 3. You put the index finger on the black note, and then the thumb on the G. I recommend that, yes. And the rest of it is the same typical type of fingering that you did on page 32. The third line, the first measure, the 3s, I still recommend a 3-1-3-1. 4, 3, then a 1-2. And then the last line is the same as the first. So let's go ahead and try this one on page 33 and see the same piece in G major. Now, when you're on your own, try playing the two pieces back to back, right after each other, so you get an idea of the difference in the sound of the different key signatures. All right, so put your hands up where they go, G position, here. All right, 4 counts, we'll play it together. 1, 2, ready, go.